Sometimes nature seems to break its own rules. Water is one of the most predictable phenomena on the planet. It should be blue, clear, or, at worst, murky. But there are places where lakes are colored in shades that shouldn't exist in nature. One such place is Lake Natron in Tanzania. Its surface is tinted a deep blood-red color. It feels as if it's not water, but molten magma. The reason for this is the highly alkaline environment, saturated with minerals and microscopic algae that produce a red pigment. Interestingly, this lake is not just unusual. It is capable of mummifying birds that end up in its waters. The hardness and chemical composition are so aggressive that all living things freeze, as if turned to stone. But there are those who have adapted. Lesser flamingos not only survive near the lake, they actually nest here. On the other side of the planet, in Australia, another wonder is hidden, Lake Hillier. Its pink color is stable and remains even in a test tube. Scientists believe that the color is produced by special microorganisms combined with a high salt content. And in Iran, there are entire complexes of crimson saltwater bodies that look as if someone spilled a bucket of paint into them. These places challenge our very idea of what water should be like. But what if the Earth itself can be just as surprising? Red dust, sharp rocks, a complete absence of life, and the illusion that you are on another planet. Such places are not the fantasies of scientists or movie sets for space films. They actually exist. The most famous among them is Death Valley in California. Here, the highest air temperatures on the planet have been recorded. Sand, stone, and absolute silence. At some point, you start to doubt whether you are really still on Earth. But there are other places, more exotic and less well-known. For example, the Danakil Desert in Ethiopia. The surface of this area is riddled with acidic springs, volcanoes, and salt craters. The temperature here rarely drops below 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and the air is filled with the smell of sulfur. The surface colors range from acid green to toxic yellow. A perfect landscape for shooting science fiction. China's Rainbow Mountains in Gansu province are also on the list of otherworldly landscapes. These rock formations look as if they've been hand-painted. The stripes are the result of millions of years of erosion and mineral deposits. But when you see it in person or in photos, it's hard to believe it's not Photoshop. When a planet's surface looks like another planet, it raises the question, just how stable is our perception of reality itself? Sometimes what we see isn't what actually exists. There are places where nature plays with human perception, making us doubt our own eyes. For example, the reverse waterfall in southern Chile. Strong upward gusts of wind are so powerful that as the water falls from the ledge, it gets caught and lifted back up. Such a sight defies all the laws of gravity and seems absurd. Here's another phenomenon, hanging rocks. For example, the Kjeragbolten rock in Norway, a stone block wedged between two cliffs. When you stand on it, there's almost 1,000 feet of emptiness beneath your feet. But there are also subtler illusions. In Brazil, a hill was found where motorcycles roll uphill, as if defying the law of gravity. It's not magic, just a clever slope and a horizon line that tricks the brain. Sun halos, double rainbows, strange shadows without objects. All of this is real, but it feels like a glitch in nature. The eye sees one thing, but the brain can't explain what it sees. But there are places where not only perception, but the very shapes of the landscape defy logic. Sometimes you come across a place where every detail seems carved according to a plan, but not by human hands. For example, El Peñol Rock in Colombia. Its shape is perfectly symmetrical, as if a massive monolith had been polished by hand. You get the same feeling when looking at the basalt columns on the island of Staffa in Scotland. They form even hexagons resembling a giant organ. There are theories claiming that such places are the result of ancient technologies or the intervention of other forms of intelligence. For example, Monument Valley in the USA is not just a collection of rocks. Some people are convinced that the shape of these cliffs suggests design rather than chance. However, there are scientific explanations for all of these objects. Millions of years of erosion, volcanic activity, and the cooling of magma. Conspiracy theories remain just a version, unconfirmed by facts. But it is precisely the combination of absolute reality and visual incredibility that makes such places truly mesmerizing. If such anomalies occur on the planet's surface, then what could be hidden underwater? There are places concealed beneath the water's surface that seem not just inaccessible but unreal. For example, the Great Blue Hole off the coast of Belize, a giant circular sinkhole plunging deep into the ocean. It looks like a black hole opening up in the middle of turquoise waters. Scientists believe its origin is connected to underground caves that were submerged in prehistoric times. Another mysterious site is the underwater forest in Lake Hillier, Kazakhstan. When you look at the submerged spruce trunks jutting out of the clear water, it feels as if nature has left its own monument here. And the caves in Mexico's Yucatan region look like an entrance to another world altogether, with underground rivers illuminated by natural blue light, underwater cliffs, coral towers, sunken karst systems. All of this seems as if it was created to remind us that most of the planet's wonders are still hidden from view. But what happens underground is even more astonishing. Inside our planet, there are places that could easily be mistaken for fantasy locations. Underground spaces are not just gloomy and cold. They can be incredibly beautiful, vast, and eerily organized. One of the most impressive underground places is the Crystal Cave in Mexico. Enormous gypsum columns, stretching dozens of feet long, pierce the space like the bones of an ancient titan. The temperature here rises to 120 degrees. That's in Fahrenheit, and without special protection, survival inside is impossible. The marble caves of Chile impress in the opposite way. They seem to be carved from turquoise marble, reflecting water and light, creating the illusion of liquid stone. And in Slovenia there is the Postojna cave system. Here, it's not just nature anymore, but an entire ecosystem underground. The caves have a life of their own. There are underground rivers flowing here, blind animals living, and even tours are conducted on a real underground train. In such places, the sense of boundaries between the earth and the underground is lost. The space seems not to belong to the surface. But what if there are just as fantastic stories above the earth? Sometimes it seems that nature itself paints like an artist, only instead of a brush, it uses light, wind, and minerals. One of the most magical sites is considered to be bioluminescence. On some beaches of the Maldives or Vadhu Island, you can see the waves glowing blue, the result of a reaction between microscopic organisms and oxygen. With every movement of the water, a gentle glow appears, as if the sea decided to light up from within. There are other scenes as well, like blooming poppy or lavender fields, where the contrast between the bright colors of the plants and the sky creates a sense of a fairy tale, or the iridescent shimmers of clouds and atmospheric phenomena when the sky is painted in unnatural colors like on the palette of an expressionist artist. One of the strangest sights is the burning rainbows. They don't arch like ordinary rainbows, but instead spread horizontally across the sky, giving the impression that the sky itself has caught fire with color. When air, earth, and water merge together, in such a symphony of color, it's hard to imagine that the very structure of the earth could be even more astonishing. At first glance, it seems that nature operates chaotically, but there are places where geology displays remarkable precision and symmetry. The wave in Arizona is a rock formation that resembles a frozen wave of sand. The surface curves smoothly as if someone had drawn it with a compass. The layers of rock are colored in reddish, orange, and pink hues, creating an effect of flowing color. Another phenomenon is the stone forest in Madagascar. The rocky spires reach upward as if they are a frozen forest of alien trees. And the basalt columns, formed as lava cooled, create even polygonal shapes that are more precise than any man-made tile. But perhaps the most mystical geometry belongs to the door to hell in Turkmenistan, a crater where natural gas burns. The flames inside pulse, reflect off the walls, and create the impression of an engineered structure, though it is merely a coincidence of nature. If nature can be so precise, how does it cope with what is constantly changing? There are places where the landscape never stands still. It literally changes every season, every year, or even every hour. One of the most spectacular examples: islands that emerge after underwater volcanic eruptions. Sometimes they rise from the water in just a matter of days. This happened off the coast of Japan, when an eruption created an entirely new stretch of land. Deserts in constant change, another example of perpetual movement. Sand dunes migrate under the influence of the wind, gradually swallowing entire villages. In Niger, there was a recorded case where, over 10 years, dunes traveled more than 100 miles, destroying several settlements along the way. Rivers and lakes are not eternal either. For example, Lake Pupoya in New Zealand completely disappears after a drought and then reappears after the rains. This is not a temporary evaporation, it's a complete change of ecosystem. A landscape that is literally capable of rewriting itself makes you wonder, is it even possible to capture the beauty of nature if it is constantly changing? Some types of natural beauty can truly be appreciated only from above. Satellite images show that the surface of the planet is dotted with shapes that resemble abstract paintings. In the Nazca Desert in Peru, ancient people carved giant figures into the earth, which can only be seen from the air. But nature itself is not far behind. In many regions, including Arizona and Western Australia, the soil forms giant concentric circles, spirals, stripes, and eye-shaped patterns. Fields in Saskatchewan, Canada. Under certain lighting, they resemble tapestries. Rectangular plots of land form patterns, as if they were drawn for an exhibition. And the icy patterns on the surface of Lake Baikal look like giant spider webs. Even clouds are capable of drawing. Wave clouds, ribbon clouds, and ring-shaped formations. All of this is like living paintings, created not by hand, but by wind and temperature. But sometimes nature's patterns appear where you least expect them, in the middle of a lifeless desert. A desert is associated with emptiness, dryness, and lifelessness. That's why encountering a real oasis can seem like a hallucination. One of the most famous is Ubari in Libya. In the middle of the sand sea, suddenly a lake with palm trees appears, reflecting the sky like a mirror. But such places are unstable. Due to climate change, they gradually disappear, leaving behind only cracks on the dried-up bottom. There are also more mysterious phenomena. For example, in the Namib Desert, there are plants that live for centuries, even though there isn't a single river nearby. And in the Sahara Desert, you can find dead trees standing on completely dry and cracked ground, like ghosts of past greenery. The Sossusvlei Valley, one of the most photogenic places in the world, but also one of the most lifeless. There are also cases of optical mirages when in the distance a supposed lake, trees, or even cities appear. They are caused by the refraction of light and the temperature difference between layers of air. But when the brain sees something like this, it starts to believe in the illusion, as if it were reality. What could be even more unexpected than greenery among the sand? Perhaps only ice hiding its shapes and movements. When it comes to ice, people usually imagine polar deserts or icebergs. But in reality, ice is capable of taking on the most unexpected forms. In Antarctica, frozen waves have been recorded, giant walls of water captured by frost in the very moment of movement. In winter, icy bubbles form on Lake Baikal. Methane rising from the bottom freezes in the clear water, creating a pattern that resembles columns in glass. Caves beneath glaciers, another wonder. In Iceland, there are tunnels where blue light penetrates through the thickness of the ice, creating the sensation that you are inside a living crystal. And in Canada, you can find ice needles, thin, fragile formations that move at the slightest breath of wind. Ice not only freezes movement, but also preserves time. The permafrost of Siberia holds within it mammoths, bacteria, and plants that froze tens of thousands of years ago. But time is not eternal, even here. The climate is getting warmer, and the ice that held secrets for millennia is beginning to release them. Sometimes it seems as if time has stopped here forever. But there are places where it really does seem to have stopped. Without ice and without frost. There are corners of the planet where everything looks as if nothing has changed here for millions of years. One such place is the relict Wollemi Forest in Australia. The trees here represent some of the most ancient forms of life, almost unchanged since the time of the dinosaurs. Their DNA carries traces of prehistoric eras, and they still exist without significant mutations. In Venezuela, on the Roraima Plateau, the plants and animals have not left this region since its formation. Because of the vertical cliffs and isolated climate, it is almost impossible to reach this place. Some scientists call such plateaus lost worlds, because biology there has evolved separately from the rest of the world. On Lake Catatumbo in Venezuela, thunderstorms rage almost every night. Lightning flashes here hundreds of times an hour. And this has been happening for centuries? Scientists explain this by the collision of air masses over the lake, but the effect is still hypnotic. It seems as if the sky and the earth have decided to remain stuck in an eternal cycle. But even in such timeless places, change is possible, especially when the earth itself begins to disappear. Some natural wonders are vanishing right before our eyes. There are islands that are literally sinking. For example, the Kiribati archipelago in the Pacific Ocean. Its population is already being evacuated due to rising sea levels. In India, coastal temples that stood on cliffs for centuries are now disappearing beneath the water. In Kazakhstan, the Aral Sea has almost vanished. Once, it was one of the largest lakes on the planet. But due to the mismanagement of rivers, it dried up, leaving behind a desert and ships rusting among the sands. There are also cases where entire villages are submerged after earthquakes. For example, in Italy, a bell tower stands in Lake Hillier, the only thing left of a town that was flooded after a dam was built. This place looks like an illustration for a story about sunken civilizations. And while some lands disappear, others emerge, with how far one can go up, down, or deep beyond the boundaries of the ordinary world.